Okay, it is Thursday, February the 13th, and it's a little bit after about 9:40 p.m., starting a little late tonight. And the reason why this lecture was set up so late tonight is because the fact that today, um, here in the Chicago area, there was a graduation ceremony that for the Mokina Tinley Park, Romeoville, Joliet, and the Aurora Naperville campus, and so I just made it back. So I'm going to cover some things that I want to share with you that I noticed about your papers, and I want to bring to your attention specifically this field project because some people don't have the right idea about how this works. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so you've already noticed in bold print, I said it's extremely important to provide APA citations in the body and references at the end of all papers. Is the course project, is the field report a written assignment? Yes, it's a paper. So there's one place. And then I also say all written assignments should be in APA format. That means citations in the body and references at the end. And then this special announcement that has been in the class since the beginning. And here's what it says. It says, I want to remind each of you that APA must be satisfied in all written assignments, which include the field reports. The idea of each assignment is to conduct research providing the sources of the information. When you provide details in your own words, the idea is from a source you should discover doing research. Remember, citations provide support for the statements contained in your papers. This has been something I talked about since week 1, as well as in this academic integrity announcement that video that we did during week 1 as well. And so then when you look at the rubric, you will see in the rubric that it requires APA assign requirements as well. So, so the key is you have to pay attention to the rubric. Notice I say it is very, very, very important. And then I talk about rubrics and how important they are. So many of you who completed the week 5 assignment made the primary error of not putting citations in the body and references at the end. Well, if you're just providing what you're supposed to provide, then you should have sources like the name of the organization. Maybe you had some research that you discovered that you're starting to provide for your area that you're doing it, whether it's law enforcement or whether it's probation, whether it's parole, or whatever area it is. Very important. And so that's one of the things that I want to bring to your attention. The other thing is that several of you did not understand what this field report is all about. Let's revisit Module 1, which we covered during week 1. And let's talk about, now it's not in the assignments, it's in the lesson content, where we talked about, where I said field work component. Notice what I talked about, and I explained in here what the field project was. Okay, the field project, number 1, it tells you first identify, research, and identify local criminal justice agencies where you could complete a minimum of 10 hours of field observation. So you should be able to have some sources that you utilize in terms of this. And then these are just some of the things. All right. Then 2, contact the agency. And then at least one module before your scheduled meeting tells you what you had to do that. And then step 5, in a 2 to 3 page document describing what you observed while conducting the field work as a conclusion to the report. And then this is how you do the conclusion. But remember that when you are doing like week 5, you have to have done this part. Some of you mistakenly decided, instead of following this, you decided to write a summary of what the course has been from week 1 to 5, or some other issues, but you have not included an agency or organization or entity that you're doing field report. Remember, the idea is not what's in the classroom. The idea is to operate on the basis is what is outside the classroom. So several of you got zeros for doing that. You're not going to be able to redo it, but next time you have to do it. So make sure, again, going back to, and like I said again, take a look at this fieldwork component. It's located under the lesson content. And I covered it during the week 1 lecture, which is rather lengthy, so you don't have to go back there. But you need to look at this. And this is what you're supposed to have been doing. And then in the 5th week is the first time that you give a summary of what you're supposed to do. You will be asked to present your first report update during week 5. Week 5's field report. That's what you, I just finished grading for week 5. So if you had any questions, you should have reached out to me by texting, email me, calling me, or what have you. So I just want to bring that to your attention. All right. So now let's go back and let's deal with what we're supposed to be dealing with for today. Let's go back to the course homepage and look at the lecture. So first, let's look at the announcement. So this week, interviewing within the criminal justice field is being covered, and you're going to make sure you read the material in Module 6. Conduct the discussion post, answering interview questions, which of course is due initial post Tuesday night, and your reply posts are due this Saturday night at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then finally, for Sunday, your written assignment, interviewing in criminal justice studies. Again, that's due this Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, and you know about my motto. So now we're getting ready. We're in the second half of the course, and so let's take a look at the course calendar. Okay, this is where we are. This is week 6 right here. Okay, and all assignments from week 1 through 5 that have not been submitted by now, you cannot submit because we're in the second half of the course, starting this week with week 6. Okay, so this is where we are for this week. Starting with Monday, then Tuesday, as I shared with you your initial post, your lecture taking place today, and notice the time says 9:30. The rest of the lectures are 8:30, and I explained to you why we pushed it back an hour. And then your reply posts, and then your written assignment, and then your key word. Now, next week, I'm not going to talk about what's required because our next lecture won't be until week 8. But in week 7, I'm going to talk about the written assignments that you have to do, not the discussion post, but the written assignment at near the end of the time that we do this. So let's go into the module for week 6, and let's look at the assignments. So module 6, written assignment, interviewing and justice studies. So you're going to write a 1 to 2 page paper. Make sure you run your papers through Grammarly. Make sure they're double spaced. Make sure that you have citations in the body and references at the end. Roman 12, very, 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 very important. And I will be running your papers through Grammarly as well. So what you're going to do is write 8 potential interview questions for your rather elaborate responses, and then your responses to these questions. Be sure to include why you believe each answer would be appropriate, and support your answers. Support your information with research, citations in the body, not a citation, citations throughout the paper. And your interview questions should be geared toward the dream job that you should have been researching during the time when you did your field report. That was the idea that we talked about from the very beginning, to coincide with what this is. As you recall, I told you from the beginning that this course was like an independent studies course, and that as a result, it's designed to help you to exit school with your associate's degrees. So some of you, that's as far as you'll go. Many of you will continue on to the bachelor's program, and then we'll see each other again. But the point of the matter is that it's like independent studies, but I check in through these various lectures, week 1, week 3, and now week 6. Then after this, it'll be each week, even week. Week 8, and then week 10 will be the very last lecture. So you want to make sure that you complete this. Here's the rubric. Sunday, 16th due for 30 possible points. Here's what you need to do. And it tells you what you need to do to get 15, which is half of the points. And then the other points are divided in making sure that you satisfy proper sentencing, paragraphs, the page length, and then finally you have, so that's 25 points. And then if you don't have APA requirements satisfied, you'll lose 5 points right away. And like I said again, I repeat, that goes with all written assignments. Any questions? Be sure to reach out to me. So then, your discussion post dealing with interview questions, and then your live lecture. Okay? So now let's go and let's talk about what we are talking about today in the lesson content. And we're gonna basically spend time just talking about what recognizing the uniqueness of interviewing and the hiring process of justice studies fields, and then common justice studies interview questions. I'm not going to give you specifics because you're going to have an assignment for that. Prepare interview questions and possible answers that are related to your field. You're going to do that. So let's talk about one of the first things to do is do some research on an organization. Now you have access to Google, and you can check the websites for many organizations, such as law enforcement, probation, parole, corrections, jail, prison, and any other areas, attorneys, or whatever you want to do. The point of the matter is is that you can find information by utilizing the websites. When you do so, you gather the information of the source that you use and utilize that in your paper as citations and as a reference page as far as providing information. But recognize that in the field of criminal justice, one of the things that is important in hiring is, number one, the ethical considerations of individuals. You will be tested and given the opportunity to provide answers, maybe some hypotheticals, to see how you would respond to determine whether or not you would do the thing that would be unethical to possibly keep a position, or either you would stick with the ethical practice and follow the letter of the law and the rules, such as you might be questioned in a scenario about how would you respond if you were arriving at the scene and then you got there and you saw that a police officer or fellow police officer or colleague had actually operated in what you believe is excessive force. When you write your report, will you write your report to reflect that? Or will you feel like the code of silence need to exist? Because in those situations, that is why law enforcement has a bad name among the communities right now, especially in the minority communities. And so it is important for you to operate ethically, as you recognize that when we talked about the beginning of every class that I talked about the transferable skill of ethics. And I stress ethics and integrity in performing the job. And so you're going to be tested to determine how ethical you are. You're going to be tested by questions to see how you would respond in communicating in a given scenario, to see how you would respond in a situation where a suspect or an individual might seem to be out of order and they're saying things and you take them personal and allow those things to cause you to lose your professionalism. You're going to be tested on those kinds of things when it comes to hiring. There'll be questions that will allow you to deal with that area. And then, of course, the education process, the things that you are learning right now in school and in courses like this to prepare you for what kinds of things take place in your day-to-day work, such as probably, inevitably, if you're going to be interviewed for a law enforcement position, you're going to probably be questioned about the Fourth Amendment and the right to search and seizure, dealing with the standards for search warrants, probable cause, the standard for stopping someone, whether it's a Terry stop, which is based upon Terry versus Ohio, the case, which we call the famous stop and frisk case, and understand the purpose of these laws. So you might be asked, why is it that a police officer is able to stop a person and pat down, and under what kind of scenarios? And you might be asked in an interview to describe that, because you should be knowledgeable about those kinds of things. And so the same thing might happen in terms of corrections. If you are approached by an inmate and the inmate threatens to do something, and you don't follow the processes of your employer, the responsibilities that are laid out in maybe the manual, the training manual that you have, those kinds of things, you will be questioned about those kind of things. So the key thing is, how prepared are you when placed into a very real situation? So that makes it very unique in terms of looking at hiring individuals in criminal justice, because remember, the purpose for criminal justice is you're dealing with individuals who are troubled individuals. And so as a result, you have to be prepared to respond during interviews about those kinds of things. When I was a police officer, I was trained and taught certain techniques to utilize. I was taught about traffic stops. I was taught about excessive force, so that the municipality or village or the entity that hires you is not sued, or at least to decrease the possibility of litigation that could take place in a situation like that. So it's important for you to understand those kinds of things. And there are plenty of resources that you can research online that will provide the information. Now, don't go taking all the information from some source that you find. Take some of the information, get an understanding about it, and then create your own interview questions. When I interviewed for my job as state program coordinator of the School of Justice Studies, I wrote down what I anticipated would be questions that would be asked of me. And that's the same kind of thing that you have to do when it comes down to dealing with the interview for a position in any area of criminal justice that you are working with. You might even be asked about your opinions, not the political issues. That's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about dealing with how you would react given a certain situation, those kinds of things. So I've given you some ideas about justice studies interview questions just based on what I've said so far. The key is recognizing that you will be challenged or questioned on things that a person who is working in the field should have what we call general knowledge. And of course, though, you will be trained after that by continuing education, various training sessions, seminars, and other things that will keep you up to date as the law changes, or either as the policies within the agency go through changes because of some possible litigious or lawsuit that took place. So, and I already gave you some idea about some common interview questions in justice studies, but almost all the questions are going to gear towards your education and your ethics, how you operate ethically in any given situation. And those are two very, very, very important tools that I've tried to hone into my students while you're in school. If you're going to be an unethical student, you're probably going to be an unethical professional, and that could be detrimental to longevity in the profession, whatever it is, whatever area that you choose. So you are going to take time to prepare some interview questions and possible answers. That's what the written assignment is for this week. So that's what I wanted to give you in terms of the topic that we're dealing with for the week. What is the goal of the interview? The goal of the interview is to see how much interest you really have in a position. How do you know how much interest a person has? When you are using this to apply for anything, you do your research. You look at some of the things that some of you have said. You look at the websites. You talk to people who work in the field itself. You know, you might do some research in terms of articles, and I'm talking about credible articles that cover areas based upon what area of the criminal justice or justice studies that you decide you want to work in. Very, very, very important. But again, I cannot overstate the importance of recognizing how important ethical application of what it is that you're going to be engaged with. They want to hire people who are educated, ethical, and able to operate in a professional vein. And you will be challenged during your interviews to operate in that vein. Okay? So that's chapter 6. I am going to give you a key phrase in just a minute, but before I adjourn for the night, I want to make sure that I give you some details about the assignment for week 7. Here we are under assignments. So in terms of this assignment specifically, good versus poor communication. As you can see, you're to develop a 2 to 3 minute original video, and that demonstrates a job interview for a criminal justice position. Now, then in one page, summarize the content of your video. Be sure to include your explanation of how you demonstrated good versus bad communication and how each one plays in the job interview process. Now, remember, it's going to be something that involves criminal justice. You want to get as close to that as possible. Now, some of you are going to say that you have this problem. You're not able to create your own video, and it says notify your faculty member as soon as possible. As an alternate video source, you may be able to share a link to an online video that demonstrates good versus poor communication. So I'm giving you permission to do that. You don't have to reach out to me to ask me. One student has already asked me tonight, but that's when I told the student pay attention to the lecture because of the fact that I am giving you permission to utilize that. Now, but remember now, when you give the link, make sure that you write one page elaborating on what that information is, and then put citations in the body and references, of course, at the end to be able to cover the topic or the area that is presented in that online video that you find. Giving proper credit so that you're not committing plagiarism according to what you have learned so far in this school. And so that's the assignment for week 7. And so then we will come together for week 8, and then I will talk about the assignments for week 9 and week 8. And then when we get to the lecture in week 8, I'm talking about week 9. Then when we get to 10, I'll talk about 10 and 11. So you'll be abreast of all of that. Any questions? Feel free to reach out to me. Very, very, very important. So what I want to give you before I say good night to you is a key phrase: criminal justice interview. That's the key phrase. And you give me that to get your appropriate points. Remember, there will not be a lecture next week, but there will be a lecture the following week. From this point on, all your lectures are even weeks. So you've got 11 weeks of class, but you're going to actually discover that your assignments that involve the key word or phrase in a lecture is going to be even weeks. Okay, so I've given you the key word and phrase, so I'm going to, at this time, stop sharing, and then I'm going to terminate this session. And again, remember what I said at the beginning about these, about the field report. And like I said again, you're not following the rubric. You're not following my instructions. You're not listening to what I say during the lectures. When I say all written assignments, it means what it says. All right? So with that, I'm going to say good night to you.